Okay, the Stephen bomb has dropped. Okay, we've got a lot to talk about. The sun's going down. Let's do this. The Comic-Con extended song was pretty much fan service. We got to see how the house got built around the temple, and as we all assumed, it was the Gems and Greg that got to doing that. All the fan service aside, what really matters about that animation is that we finally got to see a sneak peek of what has to be Yellow Diamond. It just has to be. It makes sense. The way she's so ominous and standing behind Jasper and Peridot and Lapis Lazuli. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but in my videos I make speculations and estimates, but I don't like making baseless claims. Which is why I hadn't brought up something very important. I'm sure most of you have heard about it already. It's the ruins, the ceiling thing drawings, you know, the hieroglyphics that were in that fortress in one of the early episodes. Now, I hadn't mentioned it before because it was obviously a hint of something greater, but we didn't have anything to tie it into. Now we have knowledge of Yellow Diamond's existence, their relationship to the crystal gems, and on top of that, we now got to see like a glimpse of what Yellow Diamond might look like. Taking all that into account, now we can make a better analysis of what these drawings actually meant. So in these hieroglyphics, we can see on the bottom part that obviously a lot of people suffered in this fortress. What it appears to be is that humans were tortured and killed with the contraptions within that fortress. What's even more enigmatic is the floating characters on the top. Now, in the left panel, we see this character with like hands going at it. It would appear that it's people worshipping, or maybe in complete fear of that gem, maybe both. And it would make sense because imagine ancient civilizations thousands of years ago being approached by these characters who have dominated intergalactic travel. They can shapeshift, they fuse with one another, and they become huge beings that can destroy cities. What are they gonna think? They're gonna think they're gods, and they're gonna be afraid, and they're gonna possibly worship them. So that's what seems to be going on in the first panel. Now, second panel, it's obviously Rose Quartz facing off against another being that seems to be very powerful as well. But the interesting thing is that character in the middle panel doesn't really look all that much like the one in the first panel. Now, why would that be? I mean, we're starting to puzzle this together. We assume that this character is Yellow Diamond, but there's three separate ones. There's three characters, all with an inverted triangle on their chest, that we assume to be a very powerful gem, which would make sense if it's Yellow Diamond, but they don't look the same in these hieroglyphics. In the left panel, there's one that has like a triangle shaped head with spikes coming out. The middle one, it's straight up like Vegeta kind of haircut. On the right panel, there's another one that has spiky hair, but it's more horizontal than going upwards, really. So it doesn't look exactly like the one in the middle panel. And so what we can assume is that either these are three separate entities, or they're different forms of the same gem. We don't know yet, but consider this. If you had to speculate what the most powerful of all gems would be, it would make sense that it's diamond, because diamond is the strongest naturally found substance on Earth. When you think of that, you would say, well, then why is the Jasper... When you think of that, you say, why is Jasper and Peridot's leader called Yellow Diamond? Why not just Diamond? Why not a regular diamond? Because you would assume that the neutral diamond would be the more powerful one. But what if Yellow Diamond isn't actually the most powerful gem? What if she's just right below Diamond, the real most powerful gem? Or perhaps there's more than one diamond, hence there being a yellow one, and they kind of share power, but they're all very powerful and forces to be reckoned with. Another interesting thing is that we see yellow diamonds, well, what we assume to be yellow diamond silhouette in the extended song at Comic-Con, and it looks nothing like any of these three that we've already seen. So what is this telling us? Maybe over time she's changed her appearance. That would make sense. Garnet doesn't look the same as she did back when Greg and Rose first met, and Amethyst changed her hair a lot, and that's what specifically looks different about Yellow Diamond, specifically her hair. She seems to have this hairdo with two spikes coming out of the front, which I would assume to be part of her hair. She seems to have short hair, and also like two spikes coming out of the sides. That does resemble the left panel character that we saw before, but not exactly. It does vary a little bit, but it's definitely something that we should keep an eye out for. And I'm very much leaning towards the possibility that there's not just one diamond, there's a few diamonds, hence these hieroglyphics and the fact that Yellow Diamond looks completely different to what we thought her outline would be like. Now, onto the episode Cry for Help. We finally got to see what Garnet's fusion with Pearl looks like. I'll be honest with you, I was disappointed. I was expecting a lot more, specifically because Garnet and Pearl on their own, they're so great. And then to mix together and become this sort of buffoon kind of character, I was really not expecting that. Pearl is so uptight and Garnet is so statuesque and imposing that I did not expect their fusion to be so laid back and comedic. It to me did not make sense at all. The gap tooth in the character, I'm assuming it's for comedy purposes, but it really takes away from the character's imposing image. Ability wise, it's pretty much what I expected, you know, very strong, but at the same time very precise, which is what we would get from Pearl's side. They created a hammer using Pearl's spear and Garnet's gauntlets. That all makes perfect sense. I was really happy with Sardonic's abilities. There were a couple of people out there saying, "Oh no, they promised a new gem. It's not. It's that gem we see in the Comic-Con trailer. It's Sardonic's. It has to be." Like, bitch, no. Sardonic's was Pearl and Garnet. But yeah, Sardonic's isn't a bad character. I mean, it's just not what any of us expected. I think, right? But still, pretty powerful gem, pretty cool. Whatever. We've gotten so many relationship arcs within Steven Universe that I can kind of see Pearl growing feelings for Garnet, and it makes sense in hindsight, because Pearl is always kind of sucking up to Garnet and being supportive regardless of anything she says and laughing at all her jokes. So I don't know, maybe Pearl is starting to have a romantic interest in Garnet. I wouldn't mind seeing that. It's just hard to understand because Garnet is already two people. So the fusion of these two people being in a relationship with a third person, how would that work? I have no idea. It just gets more complicated as it goes along, doesn't it? Okay, Keystone Motel, episode 64, Finally, some Sapphire and Ruby. Jesus, we needed that. So although it seemed kind of obvious considering that Sapphire is like this entirely blue character and Ruby's like this completely red character, it made sense that they would be like polar opposites, which they seem to be. The future vision, now we understand, comes from Sapphire specifically. She can analyze the future outcomes of pretty much any situation that she can conjure up. Funny, I had kind of thought that she might be a Cyclops because we can't see her eyes. I was like, girl, why you have those bangs? What are you hiding? But yeah, she's a Cyclops. We didn't really get to see what their overall abilities might be on their own. Although we got some character development for Ruby and Sapphire respectively, I'm still looking forward to see them fighting on their own. That'd be fantastic. If somehow a conflict gets them to separate and fight on different terms, that'd be great because we get to see how Ruby uses her gauntlets by herself, and she seems to have heat kind of powers, right? Whilst Sapphire seems to have ice powers. Garnet doesn't have those apparently, I mean, but she does have electricity. How cold and heat may lead to electricity powers, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe there's some basic physics mechanics kind of principle that I'm missing. Maybe it's a sort of static electricity kind of result. That's what would make sense considering their fusion and they're so opposite to each other, right? You know, this is a kids show, but they really like pushing the boundaries, and I love it. I mean, we've gotten a lot of representation for the LGBT community within this show, and I think it's great because it does it in a really tasteful manner. Don't get me wrong, I don't support regular heterosexual displays of affection on shows that are for kids if they're not tasteful. They have to be subtle things. You can't really push that too much because they're kids. Now, LGBT relationships in cartoons should be given the same kind of space, I would say, and this is the ideal way to do it. This generation of children that are watching Steven Universe, I think as a result of the kind of relationships that are displayed in the show, they'll probably, if they're a member of the LGBT community, they'll come to terms with it earlier on because the show showed them. I'm so stupid. But yeah, the show demonstrated that there's nothing wrong with that, and we see that with the relationships between Rose Quartz and Pearl, with Ruby and Sapphire. So that I know of, there's no male relationships in the show. I don't know if they're gonna do that at any point. I don't think so, considering how female centered the show is on the whole. But I'm not calling for the inclusion of it. I think that if it adds to the plot, by all means do it. But if it's just to include another demographic as to not offend people, drop it. But yeah, when Ruby and Sapphire get back together and they start, like kissing and shit, that was cute. So yeah, Greg was missing for a big chunk of the episode. He seemed to be purchasing new rollers for the car wash, but he was being so mysterious and ominous about who he was actually meeting, and he said, if I don't come back by such and such, call the police. So yeah, that ominous undertone, whole sketchy kind of vibe, I was thinking, holy crap, are they hinting at the fact that Greg might be a drug dealer? Which would make sense, because let's face it, Greg is a total fucking stoner. Don't pretend, don't pretend, we all know. That kind of begs the question, what would happen if Crystal Gems had a drink or smoke weed? Again, shit will probably never know. Unless they do another 107 facts about Steven Universe, you know, kind of stuff that would never be shown on the actual television show, but Rebecca Sugar can kind of on the side say, I thought about it. This is pretty much how it goes down. You're welcome. Okay, on to the next thing. Onion Friend! This episode, as far as the overall plot, it doesn't really move it along much. It's one of those character development episodes, but I love me some character development. For a while, we had wondered who Onion's mom was, and a lot of people had speculated that it was Vidalia, and when Steven walks into Onion's garage following him, then he's confronted with Onion's mother, and ding ding ding, it's Vidalia! Vidalia's pretty freaking hardcore. She doesn't mess around. She came with a freaking shotgun. I mean, that looked really, really white trash. You know, lady in slippers, overalls, and a fucking shotgun. That is textbook white trash. But yeah, it was nice to see that Vidalia has a past with the crystal gems. Apparently when Amethyst lost Greg as a friend, when he started to get involved with Rose Quartz, she turned to Vidalia and they became pals, and they obviously messed a lot of shit up together because that's how they are. But also, Vidalia seems to have this sort of obsession with Amethyst. I don't know if it's because all of these relationships that we speculate to be true between characters turn out to be true, or at least were a real thing at one point. But again, I'm getting the vibe that Vidalia and Amethyst at some point were a thing. They're obviously not anymore because they didn't even know each other were like still there. This town is so friggin' tiny. You can go from one side of Beach City to the other in less than 10 minutes probably. It's really a small town, and you're gonna tell me that Amethyst didn't know Vidalia was still there? Seriously? So basically, Vidalia is Onion and Sour Cream's mother, seeing as how Amethyst already knew that Sour Cream existed, and didn't know that Vidalia had married Yellowtail. What this tells us is that Yellowtail is not Sour Cream's actual father. Sour Cream is Yellowtail's stepson. That's what is implied by the fact that Amethyst didn't know Vidalia had married Yellowtail. So that basically leaves Sour Cream's potential father as Greg's ex-manager. What was that fucker's name? I forgot. But yeah, basically that seems to be the case. And that would explain why Sour Cream is so different to Yellowtail. And the two don't get along at all. They're always, as Vidalia said, at each other's throats. Meanwhile, Onion is so much like Yellowtail. They're like the exact same person we saw a picture of when Vidalia... Now, before this point, it would seem that Onion, apart from being like really messed up and insane, that he was maybe evil. Like, he does a lot of things purely for the purpose of annoying or hurting people. And up to this point, I thought maybe he's gonna have this sort of Gunther from Adventure Time kind of character development where he seems very harmless at first, then he turns out to be a complete fucking psycho. And he is pretty psycho. I mean, this episode made me really much more scared of Onion, if anything. The whole snake thing, and when the episode ends and we thought that Onion was like, oh, he's really nice, he gave Steven one of his toys. And then he opens his mouth like, what? There's a fucking mouse in your fucking mouth. What is wrong with you? Yeah, Onion is really creepy, but at least now we know he's like not actually bad. He's just freaking insane. He might seriously have some sort of mental condition. Or perhaps he just has really bad parents. I mean, his dad is never around. He's a fisherman. And his mom is sort of white trash. And although we don't get any hint of this, let's be real. What do you think about moms that are white trash? They watch a lot of TV and possibly drink. So maybe Onion doesn't really get the sort of parenting that he deserves, and that's why he's so messed up. But yeah, all around good episode. Some Amethyst backstories. We got Vidalia development, Onion development, all around good episode. We didn't really get to know any more about Sour Cream. I mean, we already knew he's a bit of a loner and that he's a DJ. Will we get an episode exclusively to give Sour Cream some character development? Maybe. It'd be cool to see how his character develops in terms of his father. Maybe have some sort of conflict between him and his father. But I don't really think he's that much of an interesting character, really. He's really, really just a teenager that has conflicts with his parents. That's normal. And lastly, we have historical friction. This episode really sucked. Just kidding! Acting. I actually really like the episode. I mean, this is what I love about Steven Universe. You can have episodes completely just about character development, and even though the plot isn't really moving along at all, you love it because it's good writing. The characters are so three-dimensional. I mean, wow, I love this show. It's my new Adventure Time. It really is. And Adventure Time sort of turned into this weird pseudo-philosophical mishmash of concepts that I don't know what to think anymore. I'm just really hoping we get a lot of catharsis from some of the Adventure Time conflicts that are yet to be resolved. But enough about that. This episode was really cool. We got some Mayor Dewey development. And what really stands out about this episode is that we know that the gems have been here for a long time. And it's basically reinforced by the idea that Pearl was there when Beach City was founded by Dewey's ancestor. Now there's a whole odyssey that Dewey's ancestor had to go through to cross the ocean and get to where Beach City is now, blah blah blah. That was all very fun. But then it gets very serious in the sense that it was giving us backstory to Beach City's past and the gems for that matter. We see that there was this monster in the bottom of the ocean that attacked Dewey's ancestor's ship. The character resembled the centipede monster from the first episodes. But I'm not sure if it was exactly the same character because when the stage prop busted up from the stage, it seemed to be a tentacle more than any part that would resemble the centipede. But the silhouette that we had in the background really did look like the centipede. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. There's this statuesque, gigantic crystal gem that comes along and saves Dewey's ancestor. Now, look at the silhouette. The hair kind of resembles Rose, except that it's a little more cloudish kind of silhouette. And it only has two arms on each side. So it's safe to assume that it's a combination of two of the crystal gems and not more than that. So back then, rose quartz was still around. So the long hair kind of resembles rose quartz's hair, but it's a bit more bubbly. And who in the group has bubbly hair? Garnet. So maybe that silhouette that we were looking at was Garnet fused with rose quartz. Shout out to Katsunori for pointing that out. A friend of mine, he actually said, well, that kind of would make sense if it's Garnet and Rose, and he's totally freaking right. Was this a way to give us some fan service to keep us entertained, or maybe was it actually a sign that at some point we're gonna show this character? I would love to see that fusion. In fact, I would love to see all of the possible fusions that we could have. We already saw Pearl and Rose. I'd love to see Rose and Garnet, Rose and Amethyst. I'd love to see all of those. But ultimately, I think the last fusion that we're going to see is the completely combined fusion. That is obviously the one that's the statue outside the temple with the four arms on either side. That's probably the last fusion that we're going to get to see. Will we ever get to see it again? If we do get to see that fusion, there's two possibilities. It'll either be an absolute war breaking out flashback, a critical point in the struggle against Homeworld Gems, or if Rose's essence is still very much alive within Steven, as we assume that it is, if Steven manages to fuse all the gems together, I'm pretty sure the outcome will be very similar, if not the same, as to the statue outside the temple. Maybe it will be a bit more androgynous, considering the fact that Steven's male, but definitely it's going to be very similar, and I'm pretty sure it's going to have two separate faces like the temple does. Moral of the story, don't stand around old ladies. They will grab your ass. So yeah, that's pretty much all the topics that I wanted to cover. If you think I missed anything worth mentioning or discussing or making predictions about, leave me some comments, please. I really appreciate the feedback from you guys, because that makes me produce better content for you. And that's pretty... as I'm talking right now, the next episode is gonna come out called Friendship. I'm gonna try to watch it as soon as I can, so I can cover it and give some reviews. Maybe it won't be. I won't do that in a few days. I'll probably wait till the next episode comes out too, and do them together. That seems to be the best way to do it. Thank you, Rebecca Sugar. Your show is the cartoon equivalent of crack cocaine. Also, if there's any other shows that you would want me to cover, like Gravity Falls or Adventure Time, if you want any coverage on that, let me know in the comment section so I can get started on that. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to cover a lot of shows. I don't have that much time to do these things. But I'd appreciate to know what you guys want so I can make it. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching. I'm Seth Blizzard. Till next time, remember to leave a like and subscribe. Bye-bye.